All right, it is SNL. Landry Locker, Cody Stutes with you. We talked about the offense yesterday. Today, we're going to focus on the superpower, as I call it, the defense, D'Amico's defense, a superpower, much more impressive than that flex that Cody just threw up. But let's just break down the superpower of the Texans and the defense, and what I think is really the key to them reaching the highest level of potential goals that are set out. I know offense we're going to focus on a lot, but the defense is going to be the key. And when you look at what they got on defense and you pull up the depth chart, it's hard not to anticipate this being a pretty good defense. And it's hard actually to imagine that the defense doesn't get even better than it was last year.
I know when D'Amico Ryans was in San Francisco, he was on the staff as they sort of turned into one of the best defenses in football. Robert Saleh was initially their defensive coordinator. Then obviously Ryans took over. We should have seen and almost expected this to occur when D'Amico got the head coaching job, right? Like we should have expected them to. I don't know that it was good. I don't know that we were going to think going into the third year it was going to be this quick, but we should have expected they were eventually going to have an elite defense, right?
Yeah, I mean, elite for sure. Yeah, I mean, a really, really good defense, yes. But I would say even at this point last year, the offense was what excited the most people. Like,
for sure.
You were very excited about the offense, and then you got kind of a taste of what the defense can be. And what impresses me the most about this defense, and I think what separates this Texans defense from the offense and the version that we've known up to this point, not the version that we don't know that we're going to learn about as camp begins and we get a grasp of what exactly Nick Caley does and what he's about, is they seem to have a really good ability to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
They're not player dependent, and there's a lot of different things that they can do. And the young talent that they have has only gotten better since D'Amico got here. And you can make a strong case that a lot of these guys that you feel really good about, their best football is actually ahead of them. And that's what really, really excites you about this defense, to the point where I think you're talking about a top 5 defense in the NFL this year. And if they're top 10, based on the standards and maybe the expectations I have, I was going to say unfair expectations, but I don't think it's unfair. I think it would almost be a disappointment. That's how good I think this defense is.
I would also go and say that while we've seen some really impressive performances from them and big stretches of the season where they have been excellent, we still didn't, like, they didn't get to finish the season with the best version of themselves because they didn't have, once Jimmy Ward went down, they didn't have somebody to replace what Jalen Pitre and Jimmy Ward brought to the table at nickel cornerback. So, like, they were missing a piece there at the end, and I feel like that's probably one of the reasons D'Amico Ryans has so heavily emphasized depth when he's talked about the team this offseason. And then the previous year, as the defense kind of had some moments here and there. Obviously, the playoff game against Cleveland was much, much better than the regular season game, and they looked great in that. And then Baltimore kind of smoked them. They were doing that at the end of the year without really any safeties they were confident about or felt good about because of injuries. And so I do wonder, and injuries happen, so it's tough to predict, but if they stay fairly healthy on defense, that's another key to really just not only unlocking, but staying at that elite level.
Yeah, 100%. Let's go to the super chat real quick, and then we're going to get in on the depth chart and see if there's a lot of knowns, but let's see if there are any unknowns once we pull it up visually like we did yesterday with the offense here on SNL post-draft. Landry Locker, Cody Stutes with you. Anticipate hearing from D'Amico next week. We'll also get our first look at rookies, and we'll have our overreactions, just seeing the rookies in front of us for the first time. So right along with us, this is a 365 production, and we appreciate you riding with us. Going to the soup. You ain't never had Swarm. Stone alone 5 times. He's in that truck, baby. SNL and the chat salute. Houston for the win 2025. He's got the emojis. Shout out to Stone alone 5 times. Our guy. Shout out to the truck drivers out there, man. the real grind. Get on that road. You think Stone Alone's a violent truck driver? You think he's swerving on him like we just said, or swarming on him?
I have to imagine if you're a long-term truck driver, you've probably acquired a cooler mentality than your typical driver. Like, I've been known to flip the bird to somebody, get a little upset about some traffic hoopla. When you're driving an 18-wheeler, I feel like you got to have like a high threshold to get pissed off.
Yeah,
you got to tank.
Some truck drivers don't mind traffic. They don't love it, but some of them don't mind it. It's like, hey, it is what it is.
It's part of the game, I guess,
HD AV Traveler, afternoon, Cody Landry and Fringe. HD AD Traveler, known as Jack. Not Easterby. Not Easterby, though. Pawn Shop says he's a truck driver too. Shout out to him. Shout out to Preston, another truck driver. We are men of the people. So let's get into this depth chart, and let's try to. The plan here is to pull it up in front of us visually, and much like we did with the offense yesterday. And if you missed that, go back and check it out. Like that video as well. But we want to get a visual look of what the defensive depth chart looks like at this point. Now, on offense, Nick Caserio has said, we're going to see how it plays out on the offense. We could bring someone in. If they bring anyone in on defense, I think I could see them bringing guys in at D tackle. I feel like they're pretty set at edge. I don't know. Is there any other way that they bring another edge in, and then maybe linebacker depth? But I feel like they're kind of set there too. You can always use corners, and corner depth could be an area that we'll get into in a second. But they're pretty set in a lot of very important areas.
They've got 9 defensive ends. I would think they have, 9 defensive ends.
Pretty good ones too, by the way. Damn good ones. The best duo in the league. And then you just got a lot of rotational guys that you can do. And I'm intrigued to see what Darrell Taylor looks like, especially with Derek Barnett. I know you have him there third. I wonder what they can do with Darrell Taylor, because he's a very intriguing name. And I thought that was kind of one of those like sneaky free agents who they signed, who it's like, what do Burke and D'Amico see there?
9 guys for, I would tell you, at most 6 spots when it comes to defensive end. Probably 5, I guess 10 defensive linemen is what they ultimately end up keeping. And then at linebacker, as you see, I built this depth chart out here. I just put 2 linebackers spots because I feel like most of the time we're going to watch them play 2 linebackers if they have the guys to play the nickel cornerback spot. And so when you think about just 2 linebackers and you think about the veterans that they do have, the guys who are clear depth guys or clear special teams guys, they got a loaded linebacker room they probably shouldn't add any linebackers to. So, I'm with you. If they're adding bodies, it's probably to a secondary spot or one of the big guys over there in the middle.
The DT is interesting. They bring back Sheldon Rankins. He was a big part of things a couple years ago. They bring him back. And you have Sheldon Rankins, who Will Anderson's very excited to play with. But play next to. And then you have Mario Edwards, Tim Settle. They're both back. Look, I don't know if I don't want to just completely dismiss Mario Edwards, but we're talking decade plus in the league. Pleasant surprise last year. I'm keeping a close eye on that just to see if maybe somebody can push Mario Edwards, or if we just see him turn back the clock, because that is kind of a guy who last year, if you told me he didn't make the team, it wouldn't have shocked me. And he played well. And I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't churn that spot on the roster for trying to find another guy like Mario Edwards, as opposed to bringing back Mario Edwards, much like they kind of did with Sheldon Rankins the year before, and on a higher level.
I'd tell you the optimistic outlook for Mario Edwards is you hope that he doesn't get suspended this year, and you hope that the second year in this system allows him to do even more than what he did last year. But the history is not that teams invest in Mario Edwards and make him a starter or a key rotational player. The history of Mario Edwards is, hey, new team every, couple of seasons or so. So I lean a little bit more towards skepticism than optimism when it comes to Mario Edwards as a key piece in the defensive tackle room. But they like them enough to bring it back, and they've got a lot more benefit of the doubt over on defense than they do when they do this with an offensive player.
And then Tommy T is someone that's always it's interesting because when you initially saw him, it was like, damn, who is that number 72 making the play? And then couple weeks later, it's like, oh wow, that 72 made another play, and then all of a sudden, he's kind of in the rotation a little bit. He's 25 years old. He's been on a lot of teams. He's one of those guys I do wonder, like, do we see, especially in with how relatively thin they are at D lineman, like it's not like he's playing. Like he's not playing behind the equivalent of Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson on the interior. You do wonder if maybe he comes into camp and that's kind of a guy that damn near be a starter in one of your more impactful defensive tackles. He's kind of like last year. He was kind of like what Derek Barnett was when Derek Barnett first got here. I remember the Tennessee game when Will Anderson missed and Case Keenum started, and you look out there and you're like, damn, that 95's out there doing his thing. He looks pretty damn good. He didn't have 2+ sacks or whatever in a game, but Tommy T is kind of one of those guys that they seem to like, and he seems to kind of be finding his groove, and he seems to be getting better and better each time that you see him.
And they trusted him a lot there at the end of the season last year and played him, and he's one of the reasons I'm surprised Kurt Hinish is still in this organization, because Kurt Hinish was a healthy scratch because they decided that Tommy Togiai gave them a better opportunity on the field. And again, another player, the short history of the NFL is you can't trust him. The optimism with him is similar to Mario Edwards. Hey, he's actually on the team. He's got an offseason with the team. He now knows how the defense is going to work. Let's see what he can do, because they trusted him at the end of last year. And you mentioned his age. If he turned into a nice depth piece as a waiver find, like that'd be a nice bit of work there at defensive tackle. As I look at the whole position, though, I could definitely see a body or two, getting added or swapped out here as training camp arrives. If there's some veteran that's a week or two into training camp that's still out there that they feel like could be better than some of these guys, or someone from that defensive tree gets cut off another team, he takes another guy's spot at cut down time. It's definitely not settled.
Yeah, they're looking. And
speaking
of settled, Tim Settle, another guy who last year started out slow and then had a real hot streak and then kind of came tumbling down. A lot of snaps that he was playing. He told me as he was leaving for the offseason that, you ain't seen nothing yet. The best is yet to come.
Okay.
I like Tim Settle. I think in a perfect world, he's a rotational guy that can rush the passer. It'll be interesting to see what Tim Settle does in year 2. But I will say this, I think he's been working out. He looks a little bit more jacked. Walked by him the other day when they were working out, and he's just kind of one of those guys that just kind of crazy mofo on the D line that you like to have. But I don't know what Tim Settle will be from year 1 to year 2. And quite frankly, as we look at these D linemen, maybe Tommy T's that guy, but I don't see like this year's Tim Settle just yet. Like a guy in the D line room that could be a pleasant surprise, or this year's Mario Edwards for that matter. Like there's no like new faces. You're basically relying on what they were. And that's what I like to see, is kind of churning and seeing new faces. But maybe these guys get better. And, we're talking about last year not being as good as it gets with them.
Yeah, they didn't really go get a Mario Edwards or a Tim Settle this year. They brought back Kurt Hinish, and then they brought back Sheldon Rankins, and we're familiar with his game, and we kind of expect him to be, one of the top guys in the defensive tackle room. But they didn't really add to it like they added to some of these other positions. Obviously, new safety starter and some new depth at defensive end, some new depth at corner and linebacker and things like that. So they're pretty comfortable right now. It feels like with these guys. I do wonder once they get out there, get on the field, start seeing some of it, if there's a move or something to be made just to add maybe a more reliable body to the room.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's possibility that there could be some names. Then we get to the linebackers, and Henry To'oTo'o was a pleasant surprise last year. He came into camp in shape. He told me in the locker room with a straight face. Actually, he had a straight face. Hutchinson was laughing, but he said, "I was a fat ass last year."
Yep.
And Hutchinson laughed and he just said, "What, you want me to be honest or not?" So To'oTo'o is a guy that they like. He was a pleasant surprise. Azeez last year, very good. You don't want him in coverage. We kind of saw that on the back end. So hopefully they can have a little bit more depth at that nickel position and figure some stuff out in that area. And then they added EJ Speed and they added Christian Harris and they still have Hansen. So the linebacker depth is pretty good. I do see upside in Christian Harris this year. Like I know that last year, disappointing, not really because of anything that happened on the field, because he didn't get on the field. So I do wonder if you give D'Amico multiple elements to use. I do wonder if he just finds like the perfect blend and the perfect mix. And Christian Harris, a player with upside who we thought would be the breakout guy last year, if Christian Harris just kind of, I don't want to say he has the year that we thought he would have last year, but maybe while people are sleeping on him, we get reminded of why people were so high on him before last season.
I just wonder if there's going to be moments where Christian Harris is absolutely the better choice instead of Henry To'oTo'o. Like, are there going to be matchups or teams or certain opponents where it just makes more sense to have an athletic guy like Harris on the field versus a heady guy like Henry To'oTo'o on the field? So mixing and matching, knowing when to put the right guys in there, that's going to be something fun to watch, because it feels like D'Amico Ryans actually has options this year at linebacker if a lot of these names indeed do end up making the team. So him being able to even get a little bit deeper into the scheme the way that he wants to, that could be an intriguing element of this defense.
Well, and I mean, I think I don't think Henry To'oTo'o like beat out Christian Harris last year. I mean, at the end of the year when Christian came back, I just don't think that. I think Henry had kind of established himself, and they didn't have the trust in Christian Harris. So,
well, and the way they talked about Harris at the end of the year, I think D'Amico Ryans and has basically said, like, yeah, just couldn't catch up, basically.
Yeah.
By the time he got there was no catching up.
Yeah. I would agree with that for sure. Then we go to the
one quick question about linebacker. Neiman's on the team, right? They, with the amount of money they paid him and the special teams ace and stuff, like, is he making the team?
I don't know. I didn't understand that. Whatever. Sure. I guess.
I'm wondering if, he's maybe the special teams guy that kind of gets the axe, and they keep those other special teams guys because you don't want to get rid of EJ Speed when it all comes.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what he looks like. The way that they paid him, I figured that they might like the way that he could contribute on defense. And then they brought back Hansen, who's their special teams guy that they trust the most. So I don't know. The way in which they handled special teams was interesting. They invested a crap ton of money in guys who were really good special teams guys, including him. On the super chat, HK says, fam, shout out to you, HK. Jorge says Isaiah Bond if he beats the charges. I don't think Isaiah Bond will be a Texan. I think they're fine at wide receiver. I don't think they're looking into Isaiah Bond.
Correct.
The Pitre position. So we went from thinking that this was a adjustment, a pivot to Christian Harris's injury, to a way to find and maximize what Jalen Pitre was. And we saw how Jimmy Ward performed when Jalen Pitre went out. And quite frankly, we saw how much they struggled when they didn't have someone capable of performing in that area against the Chiefs, when the ghost of Travis Kelce had by far his most productive game down the stretch of the season, in large part because Azeez Al-Shire was chasing him and trying to pick up his jock at the same time. Now we know how much they're investing in Jalen Pitre in that role, and it makes you wonder what are they going to do behind him? Does Jalen Smith, the backup, is Jalen Pitre going to be playing 100% of the snaps? What if Christian Harris is awesome if they want to play more 3-down linebacker? Like, the commitment to Jalen Pitre almost felt not just like a commitment to Jalen Pitre, but it felt like a commitment to playing football and defense that way for the majority of the time that D'Amico's defense is on the field.
I mean, to me, when you pay a guy that much money and you look at how they used him last year when he was healthy and available, I just don't see when Jalen Pitre's coming off the field. Maybe in very, very clear passing downs, they'll put somebody with a little bit better coverage out there. But they made him the highest paid nickel cornerback in football. That's a guy that's playing a lot of football to me. That's a guy that's going to be on the field as much as possible. And early in the season last year, when they could, he was playing nearly 100% of the snaps. So your point about that being sort of a necessity because they didn't have the linebackers they trusted, maybe they do a little bit less of that because they may have the linebackers. But it's going to be tough if we're sitting here in the $10 million nickel cornerback sitting on the bench. That's not why you paid him. You paid him to put him out there and play him as much as you can. Yeah,
and it's just, you almost like when you think nickel corner, ideally he's a corner, but I like Jimmy Ward has played corner before, so like when Jimmy Ward's playing nickel and he's doing it at the highest level, and you saw him do it a few years ago and you saw the value of that. Well, yeah, he's really, really good at that because he started out in the league as a corner. Like that was what he did. And then he went to safety, and then, Pitre is more of like a
linebacker.
Yeah, he's more of like a safety that plays linebacker. So this is going to be interesting to see how this is handled, how this is juggled, how teams maybe try to take advantage of it. I like the way it looks when it's going well. It's just I'm keeping a close eye on this because if you look at the way that some people are talking about Jalen Pitre right now, I don't even know if they really Jalen Pitre, because if you look at the career of Jalen Pitre and how it's gone, okay, you were really high on him after year one. Like, you felt great about him in year one. Terrible season after that. Season after that. Then you kind of didn't know what the hell was going to happen with him last year. And he played really well. He played really, really well, and they gave him this contract as a result of that. Then when you're feeling really good about him, he gets hurt. And then you think he's going into a prove-it year, and all of a sudden they pay him. And now it feels like everybody feels awesome about what Jalen Pitre is. So does that roller coaster kind of continue with Jalen Pitre? Because I'm tapping the brakes on feeling 100% comfortable that this is going to be the first time that we felt the same way about Jalen Pitre in consecutive years. I know the role is way better. I don't disagree with that, but I do want to see what it looks like, and if the investment looks right, or if there's more to it than just the actual performance. And then they draft a guy who I think is really good potentially with them when they add Jalen Reed, and they have Smith that can do it. And I don't know what Ward's role is. We can get into that in a second. So I'm watching Jalen Pitre with caution to see what this looks like.
It's the most likely scenario is we're going to say at multiple times this year, why'd they pay him? Like I could already see it happening. They should have waited a year on this. I know they've paid him. We've had this conversation already.
Yeah,
they didn't have to do it. But the fact that they did now, he needs to be really good. He needs to be a better cover player when he does get put into coverage situations. He was not good in coverage situations last year at that position. So he's got to be much, much better at the coverage aspect, and he's got to continue to bring that physicality that he brought from that position, be a guy that affects around the line of scrimmage.
Which is the other thing about it, though, and that's the other thing about that. And we'll just put the money aside. Let's just not even talk about the money, and let's just assume that he's going to play that position. Like, you can almost make a case that you can look at that position the same way, and that kind of style, being a safety / linebacker mix and playing close to the line of scrimmage, as almost like how teams look at running backs at times, where they don't want to heavily invest in them. Like Bob Sanders is like the ultimate example, and I know it's a little bit different style, and that's like next level physicality, but Bob Sanders had like a short career, but he was one of the most impactful guys. His body couldn't hold up because he was that size and he was playing that close to the line of scrimmage. The Honey Badger, when the Honey Badger, the Texans signed him, he was as good as it got at this position, but smaller. He was banged up, and he's had trouble staying 100% healthy on the field playing that position. The reason that Jimmy Ward didn't want to continue playing that position, despite being graded pretty much by everyone as the best nickel guy in the league, is because it wouldn't allow him to hang around long. Now he gets hurt all the time, so that's a different thing. But that's the other element of this, is we've seen him do this once, and it's 1-for-1 when it comes to getting hurt. So it's just kind of it's a lot to ask of anyone. It's a lot to ask of someone that size to be that close to the line of scrimmage for that large of a chunk of snaps.
Yeah, I do wonder if they feel like his injury was a injury that could have happened at any part of the field, or if that's an injury that happened because of the wear and tear of a season. So
yeah, you never know. That's like the Tank Dell stuff.
So if durability is a concern, then the contract's going to look even worse. But if he stays durable and he plays more than 12 games, which is what he did last year, then he's going to be on his way to hopefully paying off their investment. But I didn't have any problems with him around the line of scrimmage. My problems with him from that position were in the coverage element of it.
Jacob says if Pitre steps up in year 2 in the hybrid nickel position, then you will have signed him at a discount. Good move if he improves. I disagree with that. Like that was the same argument with Titus Howard. And so you're telling me he would have been the highest paid nickel in the league if Jalen Pitre goes out there and does this year what he did last year. You're telling me that all of a sudden, how much higher are we going? I don't agree with that. I think sometimes that's the case, but I don't think in this instance that's the case.
Even if the life of the contract's an additional $6 million, you'd be happy to pay it if he had 2 years of proof. He's got 12 games of proof. It's like Stingley. You're fine paying him that contract. He's been healthy for like 30 games now, like in a row. So he's got proof of concept. Jalen Pitre didn't have proof of concept.
Cornerback. Now we go to the corner, and in the safety position, I feel pretty good about it. I don't know what Jimmy Ward is. Jimmy Ward's just on the team, right? Like there's not any speculation. Like Jimmy's just going to be there, right? So Jimmy's going to be a reserve situational safety. Is that?
Your guess is as good as mine. I have a hunch that Jimmy Ward probably feels like Jimmy Ward's not a backup, but it would seem to me like the Texans believe Jimmy Ward is a backup.
Yeah, no
He's
doubt.
not. You don't trade for CJ Gardner-Johnson and then start Jimmy Ward. That's just not. That doesn't seem like good business practice. If Jimmy Ward's just a super sub, the contract's not going to be great. But if he embraces the super sub role because he likes it in Houston, he likes D'Amico Ryans, then that's great. But I got a hunch Jimmy Ward would probably rather start somewhere than be a super sub. He's getting his money no matter what.
That Jimmy Ward, that was a weird decision that they threw out with Jimmy. Cornerback, you feel good about the top 2. And then you have some question marks with Ronald Darby. I guess I mean we say Jalen Smith is a nickel. Is there?
Well, he played outside and inside at USC. So he played inside 2 years ago and he played outside this past year. So I did not replicate anybody in any positions here on the depth chart. So, but yes, Jalen Smith could play outside as well.
Yeah. Jalen Smith is going to be someone to keep an eye on in camp. But yeah, corner depth is somewhere where I could see them addressing something. I don't know what Ronald Darby's going to look like. He's kind of in that camp as we localize it, I would say it's kind of like the high point of Ronald Darby, like performance-wise at this point for a vet, is Steven Nelson. Like if you get like someone that's performing like Steven Nelson-esque later on in their career, kind of at that point-ish. And then the low point is obviously Jeff Okudah and Henderson, who are younger guys, but that's kind of like the scale of the young corner. I don't think it's going to be as bad as Henderson, but I don't expect a ton out of Ronald Darby.
I would tell you that he's going to be better than Jeff Okudah, but that's not saying much because Jeff Okudah was unplayable. Ronald Darby's coming off from a Pro Football Focus rating, one of the worst years of his career. So the reason Jacksonville only had him there for one season. With all of that being the case about Ronald Darby, he's still like 20, 30 points better than what Jeff Okudah was rated on Pro Football Focus on all those things. The hope is you don't play any of those guys. The hope is that you have a style and a level of defense that can sustain Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley playing.
Which they did a hell of a job at last year.
Almost every snap.
Which they did a hell of a job at last year, like at a crazy level where you would look up and there were only two corners that played, and then Pitre was playing. Like they did an amazing job at that last year.
And with DeMeco Ryans' history, not just with the Texans, but his history, he doesn't love swapping corners out. Now, there may be, if you trust a couple of guys here or there may be a moment you could put somebody that's not Lassiter or not Stingley on the field. But I would anticipate, if healthy, Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter playing as much as possible with Ronald break glass in case of emergency, Darby being the backup.
Other than that, though, you feel pretty good about the defense. Nothing really crazy.
I'd love like a more notable name at defensive tackle than some of the guys, and maybe one more guy you could rely on at corner. But outside of that, you look at this defense, and it's a pretty stout defense. And when you start thinking about, hey, Will Anderson should be better, Derek Stingley should be better, Kamari Lassiter should be better, Kalen Bullock should be better, CJ Gardner-Johnson should give you more health at that other safety spot that Jimmy Ward didn't give you. You know, Jalen Pitre back playing the style of defense that they want to play. Like, it all starts to get really exciting overall when it comes to this defense and what their top end level could be. It's a potentially very impressive defense with the chance to be one of the best defenses in all of football.
Yeah, sticking with that here on SNO, we're taking a close look at the superpower, the Texans defense. We talked about the position battles kind of on the back end. Can defense win championships? This is a question that gets asked because it seems like after the Super Bowl, you get like a stretch of talk about, well, you saw what Philadelphia did to Kansas City, and that's the ultimate example right there. And you got to have this to win a Super Bowl. It's like, yeah, perhaps, like, I'm not completely disagreeing with that, but I also saw the Philadelphia Eagles top 7 in the league in yards, number 2 in rushing offense, and they also scored 36 points a game in the playoffs. So that kind of helped a little bit. You know, it wasn't like they had a grab-ass offense. I do think this defense can mask a lot of stuff on the offense. It's just going to be a matter of how Nick Caley is able to kind of balance it. And it'll also be interesting to see how much DeMeco Ryans kind of, I don't want to say you put the handcuffs on the offense, but do we get to a point where they're just playing around their superpower as opposed to letting it rip on the offense? Like, there's going to have to be times where the offense is going to have to pick up the slack. But I do think this defense, if you have elite edge guys and you have elite corners, I think you're going to be in pretty much in most games, as long as the wheels don't fall off.
Well, here's what I would say about this defense. If they want to play for a championship, an AFC championship, and then ultimately a Super Bowl, their defense is going to have a really good stretch and a really good run, because until they prove that they can make everything go through NRG Stadium, I'm expecting them to have to go on the road to one of the elite superpowers in the AFC, either Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo. I would expect them to still have to go on the road and win. And we know that defense can travel. We know they can take that on the road and punch a really good opposing offense in the mouth. And we don't have like that level of confidence in the offense. We could get there certainly over the course of the season, but I can't sit here in April and tell you, yeah, they go on the road in Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City, and they go beat those teams. No, can they go on the road and have a good defensive performance? I do believe
they did that last year.
Yeah, they did it to Kansas City.
Yeah, they did that with Kansas City, and they had an elite performance against the Chargers. So, yeah, and the other question I think that really just kind of puts it in perspective is if you look at the defense and you look at all these guys, like just go through the guys whose best ball is ahead of them, who probably haven't even played at their peak. I think you put Derek Stingley on that list, and we're talking about arguably the best corner in the league last year. I think Will Anderson's on that list, so that's 2. Kamari Lassiter's definitely on that list. That's 3. Kalen Bullock's probably on that list. That's 4. And those are positions where you can make a significant impact. It's really just going to be on. I know they don't have elite defensive tackles, but it's really you're just really going to have to see, like, if you can see Tim Settle and Mario Edwards build on what they did last year, and then maybe you find another couple versions of that somewhere, somehow on the waiver wire or something like that, or maybe a name that we didn't mention, then the sky's the limit. And I also think you got to put Christian Harris on that list, because I'm not dismissing Christian Harris just because he wasn't on the field last year. I think they built a hell of a foundation without him. And I think that the one thing that D'Amico Ryans has shown, and the one thing he showed, and notice we talk about the defense much different than we talk about the offense, and rightfully so. And it's not just about the talent, but if you give D'Amico Ryans, like we sit here and we say, how was Bobby Slowick going to use this guy on offense? And with Nick Caley, it's, well, how's he going to use this guy when he gets him? I don't have like a specific answer for what D'Amico Ryans is going to do with Christian Harris if he's healthy, except that he's going to be used the right way. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of crazy when you go back and we say, well, what we thought the Texans would be last year. But when you go back and you look at what we were saying about Christian Harris, it's not like he went out there and sucked. He just didn't stay healthy, which is Correct. A big deal. But now, you know what else you have with Christian Harris? You have a guy fighting for his NFL life now. Yep. And he is, it's the contract year, trying to get paid, trying to use you to get paid, whatever the hell happens. Maybe Christian Harris has a year where he becomes too expensive and he's gone, and he's one of the bright spots on this defense. But
be my guest.
And Nick Caserio has talked about that with players doing that and that type of thing. So I do think that's kind of like one of the things that's kind of getting lost in the fold is you feel good about all these guys. And the guy that many people felt the best about last year didn't even play. And now he's going to kind of just get to find his way. You're not relying on him to play 90% of the snaps, 80% of the snaps. You can find the right spot for Christian Harris. And I think D'Amico Ryans will do that. And I think that adds like a whole nother element to what they can do. Like on third down, like if he's putting Christian Harris out there and let's say they're blitzing or whatever the heck he wants to do with him, there's a lot of possibilities there. And I almost look at Harris and Toto now, if there are going to be 2 linebackers, it's almost like complements. It's not quite a platoon, but they can complement each other. So and that's the other thing that happened with Harris last year is Henry Toto kind of blossomed and maximized everything that they could have expected from him and more. So now you have even more depth at linebacker. So I think there's kind of some sleeping going on there.
Yeah. If you just say, hey, this is last year was a lost year for Christian Harris, and you kind of bring him into this defense coming off of his performance in his first season with D'Amico Ryans, then you would be super excited about the player. And you almost can feel that way. I know it, especially if he just couldn't catch up last year coming off the injury. If you just wipe away last year, it's a lost season. He was never going to do anything. And you bring him into this defense coming off the excitement. It's a similar level to the one you had going into last year. It's a really fun player to be adding to the defense. It's a nice chess piece for D'Amico Ryans. My flip side of this question for you, Landry, is whose best ball's behind them?
I would say maybe like the candidates could be, you could say Tim Settle, you could say Mario Edwards. What was last year kind of did you kind of keep him around a little bit too long? Maybe Aziz.
Aziz was the first name that came to mind.
Maybe Aziz. I mean, that wasn't that great of a finish against Kansas City. So maybe Aziz, but you do have Christian Harris. And I don't know if I can say Daniil Hunter because even if there is a little bit of a drop off from what you saw last year, he's still pretty damn solid. But I mean, I don't know that he could be much better than he was last year.
He claims he can because
he definitely takes care of himself to where he's going to like he is that type of guy.
Yeah.
But maybe Daniil, but there's not a ton.
Yeah, I mean, what are you really expecting out of, best ball behind them and potential disappointments maybe are a little bit different question, but if Mario Edwards is just okay, well, that's what Mario Edwards was for most of the year, was just okay. Like, he had a really good stretch there right before the suspension, but when he came back, he was just okay. Sheldon Rankins wasn't the best defensive tackle in football 2 years ago. Like, he was okay. Like, and they may just need okay from those defensive tackles. So because they're so damn good at so many other spots.
Yeah. I mean, you lower the expectation. Birdie Boy asks on the super chat, Landry, who's your Quintariano candidate this year?
I think he's changed positions.
It would have to be like Kurt Heinisch or something, right? Like just been hanging around because Quintariano was just hanging around. It would have to be Heinisch, right?
I think I know your new Quintariano is JJ Taylor.
Yeah, I would say I'm intrigued to see what JJ Taylor looks like. Would I bet on him making the team? No, but I mean, in this running back room, we saw a little bit of oomph from him last year. So yeah, JJ Taylor. I'm gonna keep an eye on JJ Taylor and see how he looks at camp.
Yeah, JJ Taylor.
Evan says, should we sign Chubb? I just don't know why Nick Chubb would want that. And I don't know, like, I look at Nick Chubb the way that I did last year when people were talking about Dalvin Cook, in that if Mixon goes down, then maybe, yes. But as long as Mixon's here and you're blending in these other guys, then I would say no. Like, is Nick Chubb a guy you hand the ball to 4 or 5 times a game? And what does Nick Chubb have left? I would say no, but
I mean,
I wouldn't complain if the name Nick Chubb was on that depth chart.
He was awful last year. Awful.
Yeah, and he was really hurt.
And I get he's coming back from an injury and the team sucked, but he was awful.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're looking for a veteran, J.K. Dobbins is the guy.
Yeah, J.K.'s the guy. J.K.'s a little bit young. J.K.'s coming off of his injuries too, but
he's been in running back kind of rotations a little bit.
Yeah, I like J.K. Chubb it's not, you're not asking about Nick Chubb 2 years ago because that would be a no-brainer. But that's
Nick Chubb averaged 3.3 yards per attempt, which is almost half what he did his previous year.
Yeah, they were bad.
They were bad. He was also bad.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of full circle because the pick that Nick Chubb was selected with was originally the Texans pick. It was in the Osweiler trade where they traded the second to get him the hell out of there. So there you go.
Yep.
What happens with Dameon Pierce? Do you think they can get better production out of him? Altered scheme? I don't know. I mean, how many times? Well, last time they acted.
How many times is the scheme the reason Dameon Pierce isn't any good or is good?
Well, last time they acted like it was just so hard for him to learn. With D'Amico and them, and then last year was supposed to be the breakout. So, yeah.
All right, I have a couple more, or one more question on defense, and this one's actually going to be a pretty tough one, I think, for you. Player most likely to make their first Pro Bowl.
Player most likely to make their first Pro Bowl?
Yes, on defense.
Amari Lassiter.
Man, cornerback is so tough though at Pro Bowl.
He's going to get challenged. I mean, if he gets challenged and I mean, last year he took advantage and had the interceptions. Like the way to do it is the statistics. So I would say Kamari Lassiter, no hesitation.
That's a good answer. I thought it just, I mean, Derek Stingley and Pat Surtain, if healthy, go ahead and check the box for both those guys.
Yeah, kind of like how Max Crosby got in last year, despite not doing much and getting hurt.
And then, I mean, Sauce Gardner's still got a lot of love for him. He probably needs to play a little bit better than he did to keep it. But there's 3. Like, they only take 4 corners, but, you know, I could – Kamari's probably the best answer. The only one I could think of, and again, it's tough because they only put like 3 safeties on the list, and there's a lot of really good safeties in the AFC. It's like, what if CJ Gardner-Johnson just went nuts? Like, in this defense, forcing fumbles, couple interceptions. So many other guys have already been to the Pro Bowl. Like, it can't be Will. He's already been. Can't be Daniil. He's already been.
Yeah, I mean, there's some possibilities in the secondary. I mean, really, any of the starters not named Stingley, you could easily say, you know. And if you have a really, really good defense, I mean, we've seen it on the offensive side of the ball where Arian Foster got some offensive linemen in the Pro Bowl. Hell, Laken Tomlinson got in the Pro Bowl because San Francisco's offense was so good. So you can get in there if you can get in the right company and get some love. Rich Boy Jay says, is it possible Bobby didn't know how to use Pierce? Yeah, it's possible.
Certainly it's possible.
Sure.
How many excuses does Dameon Pierce get to have made for him? Like,
yeah,
how many?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
How many excuses are we going to make for him? Like, come on, folks.
Possible, for sure. No doubt.
So,
anyway,
we're going to answer Dameon Pierce questions forever.
Man, he's still got a nice little, like, Pitre has a nice crew of support, which he's a likable guy. Last year when I was talking about them drafting a safety, I said Jalen Pitre is still a really good football player. So you can draft a safety and still use Jalen Pitre. That's literally what I said. I said, I don't think Jalen Pitre is a starting safety, but I think he's a good football player. So drafting a safety doesn't eliminate him. And they used him right. But now it's just kind of gotten different. But he has a very, very high meat rider crew. And maybe it's because the local, but he has like it's not Swifties, but he has like a large crew. And then Dameon Pierce is kind of like, it hasn't gone away. It's not as high as it was after year 1, but it's still there. The Dameon Pierce, I think the Mechie Mafia is gone though.
You think so?
I think the Mechie Mafia is gone. Now, I don't know if the local media, like, I was giving Jason Bristol a hard time saying if John Mechie has 2 catches, you are leading with it over there at KHOU. But I think the Mechie Mafia is kind of gone, but there's still some DP, and there's definitely a lot of Jalen Pitre.
Yeah, there's definitely still some Dameon Pierce. Okay, Dameon Pierce. I'm doing the math here on the fly here. Dameon Pierce last year for the Houston Texans, he played in 11 games. He had 293 rushing yards. Okay. That's 7.3 yards per attempt. He had 146 rushing yards on 2 carries. The 92-yarder against New England, or against Tennessee, and the 54-yarder against New England. So when you take out the 2 huge carries, you get 147 yards over 38 attempts. Just 3.8 yards.
Why are you doing this to him? Can you not have his mop-up duty long runs?
Well, I don't want anybody to talk about
away my man's janitor work. My man had the janitor outfit on in that mop-up duty. You saw him. It was like the white guy off the bench hitting the 3.
Context is king. Context is king.
We'll see. They like the guy. But yeah, that's the 3-piece combo right there. Pierce, Mechie, Pitre.
Yep.
from the that draft class.
This is not true. I am not anti.
It kind of is. It kind
That's
of
not
is.
true. That's not
Kind of
true. No, it's not. I feel like there should be more blue collar workers in this country. There should be more people that go into blue collar jobs instead of go to college. Is not for everybody. We know a lot of people that shouldn't have gone to college, Landry. We know a lot of people.
I think you're thinking of one, so we'll just move on quickly. Anyway, subscribe, like, right along. Tonight on the locker room, I'm going to play Boomer Bust. We're going to play Boomer Bust with prospects. We're going to buy stock. We're going to sell stock. I'm pretty sure all of these names will be brought up. And we could even call it the Pitres because we have the Jalen Pitre from year 1 to year 2 and then year 2 to 3. We'll just do the Pitres tonight at 10:30 amidst all the basketball.
I got a 6:00 video dropping. It's about what the draft taught me about the operation of the Texans.
Okay. I'll see you. Subscribe, like, right along. Always remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, whether Cody is
Don't do that.
Collar or
Don't
pro
do that.
collar.
Don't you do
we're
that.
all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good, no matter if you have a white collar job or a blue collar job. We'll talk Texans again soon.